The other day, Sayadaw has been explaining that when one discerns unique individual characteristics of the nama rupa that are arising as cause and effect, discerning the unique characteristic, one also comes to discern the arising, presence, and dissolution of these objects. Especially when the yogi discerns the dissolution of the objects, yogi comes to understand that the nama rupa are impermanent. Usually, most of the yogis discern anicca nupassana jnana. They develop the knowledge contemplating of the anicca impermanence. By discerning, by developing anicca nupassana jnana, one is also said to develop dukkha nupassana jnana and anatta nupassana jnana automatically. By discerning any one of the three characteristics, impermanent, suffering, and non-self, one automatically discerns the other two characteristics automatically. So by discerning the characteristic, any one of the three characteristics, by practicing, one automatically discerns the other two. It is according to the text. When one discerns any one of the three characteristics, one starts to develop Vipassana jnana, insight knowledge. And Sayadaw has planned to explain what kind of experience one can gain when one's viriya, sati and samadhi, effort, mindfulness and concentration become strong, and when one develops Udayabbaya jnana. And Sayadaw intends to explain what kind of good experiences one can get when one develops Udayabbaya jnana from both theoretical and practical aspects. Before Sayadaw explains on these good experiences, Sayadaw mentioned the Majjhima Padipada, the middle path or the middle way that has been frequently heard in the Buddha Sasana, or especially in the Dhamma field. The word Majjhima Padipada, the middle path or the middle way, it comes very often. But some of the people, they do not know what is meant by Majjhima, middle, what is meant by Padipada, the path. And Sayadaw will explain from both theoretical and practical aspects. When one develops Samassana jnana, one starts to discern the impermanence, suffering, and non-self of the nama rupa phenomena. When one discerns the true characteristic of impermanence, one automatically discerns the other two characteristics. By discerning any one of the three true characteristics, one is said to be on the path leading to Nibbana. One is said to be on the straight path leading to Nibbana when one discerns any one of the three characteristics. When one has overcome the discomfort aches and pains. When practicing, one feels light, and the discomfort is insignificant. So at this stage, yogi can even challenge the pain. When the yogi gets to the stage where the yogi has the courage to challenge the pain, yogi becomes brave and courageous, and yogi will able to assert arambhadhatu, the initial effort or the diligent effort, and then one can assert effort further to the stage of nikammadhatu, stepped up effort or persistent effort. When the yogi overcomes the stage of dukkha, yogi feels more courageous in the practice. Usually yogis have to experience dukkha lakkhana, the characteristic of suffering. And when one overcomes this stage, one becomes quite relieved, becomes comfortable and light. Sayadaw gives an example. If a person has to carry a heavy load, a heavy burden, then the person feels out of breath having to carry a heavy burden, and it brings discomfort. When the person puts down the burden, the first person feels light, good to breathe, and comfortable. In the same way, when the yogi has overcome the difficult stages of pains and ache, yogi is said to be on the straight path leading to Nibbana. And the yogi is said to be on Majjhima Patipada. Yogi is said to be on the straight path, the middle way or the middle path. And Sayadaw will explain from both theoretical and practical aspects. Majjhima means the middle or the center, which is free from the two extremes. In Buddhism, it mentions the middle path that is centered from the two extremes. The middle path is free from the two extremes. There are two extremes. The first one is indulging oneself in sensual pleasure, and the second one is practicing in order to exhaust and torment oneself. Usually, most of the people do not know that they should have a control of themselves by mindfulness. 99%, at least the 99% of the people do not know that they should have a control of themselves with mindfulness. Among the four types of person who keep their norm or who keep their ideal, among these four types, the people who take Dhamma as the norm, who take Dhamma as the priority, there is only one person who gives priority to the Dhamma, who set the norm of the Dhamma, one person out of 100,000. And Sayadaw says, if it were among the whole population of the world, it would be even less than one out of it would be less than 1 out of 100,000. So most of the people do not know that they should have a control of one's physical, verbal, mental behavior by mindfulness. And most of them are letting their mind go freely. They are letting their mind to indulge in sensual objects. So usually people are indulging in sensual objects such as good things to see, good things to hear, good things to smell, and so on. So the worldlings who are in the Kama realm, they indulge in their mind and they are letting their mind go freely on sensual objects. Indulging in sensual pleasure, it is called Kama Sukhalika Nuyoga, and majority of the people are indulging in sensual pleasure. The majority of the people are pursuing Kama Sukhalika Nuyoga. On the other hand, the other people, they detest indulging in sensual pleasure, and they think that indulging in sensual pleasure is based on one's strength in one's body, and they misunderstand that by tormenting one's body, exhausting one's body, such kind of sensual indulgence will not take place. So they practice wrongfully, such as Paṇḍitā, where one's body is subjected to 5 kinds of heat. And some of them practice with their head down, their body up. They practice their body upside down, and some of them practice naked. Some of them, they go into the icy water in the cold weather, and they think that by doing thus, they can overcome the defilement. It is incorrect, it is wrong path, it is just self-tormenting practice, and it will be mere exhausting the body, tormenting the body without benefit. It is called Atta Kilamata Nuyoga, self-tormenting, self-mortification practice. Majjhima Padipada, the middle path, is away from these 2 extremes. Among the 2 extremities, the first one is Kama Sukhalika Nuyoga, indulgence in sensual pleasure, indulgence in sensual objects. Buddha detested Kama Sukhalika Nuyoga in 5 words. The first word Buddha used to content on Kama Sukhalika Nuyoga is Hino. Hino means very inferior, low class, inferior things that are done by low, inferior person. Most of the people like sensual pleasure. Even the insects like to have sensual pleasure. Just as the human likes sensual pleasure, the same goes with the insects and animals. Even though the animals and humans are different, but they are the same in liking the sensual pleasure. And the second word is Kamo. It is the practice of low class village people. It is the practice of low people. Potojaniko, meaning it is the practice that it is the act that the people with thick layers of defilement do, rather than overcoming the defilement with sila, samadhi and panya, morality, concentration and wisdom, rather than abstaining, preventing, curing, suppressing and uprooting the defilements. If one leaves the defilements without overcoming them, one indulges oneself in sensual pleasure, and thus indulgence in sensual pleasure is said to be potojanika. It is the act of the worldlings who have thick layers of defilement. Usually people leave their mind uncontrolled. People leave their bodily behavior, verbal behavior, mental behavior in misconduct. So usually people commit wrongdoing by body, speech and mind by indulging their defilements. If this happens when the people indulge in their defilements and commit wrongdoing by body, speech and mind, such kind of person is inhumane. The person is said to be not a true human. Potojanika means it is the act of people who have thick layers of defilement. The other word is anariyo. It is ignoble. It is not the kind of act done by pure noble person, but it is the kind of act done by ignoble people. Anatta sanhito, it is not one's true welfare or benefit. Usually, people do worldly matters such as education, doing business in order to learn, in order to earn, in order to support the family. Earning, making business is not one's true welfare or benefit. So in the worldly way, it is not special, it is not uncommon to be earning or supporting the family. But in the Dhamma way, it is said that earning, making money, making business is not one's true welfare or benefit. One should refrain from wrongdoing by body, speech and mind, and one should rectify one's mind with mindfulness, and one should prevent, cure, suppress and uproot the defilements. By practicing Vipassana, one can suppress and weaken the defilements. When one's knowledge becomes mature, when one gains path knowledge, one can totally uproot the defilement. Sila, samadhi, panya, morality, concentration and wisdom are one's true welfare and benefit. If one lets one's mind go freely, it would lead to harm, and it is not beneficial. So in this way, Buddha contented Kamasukhalika Nuyoga in these 3 words. The other extremity, Attakilamata Nuyoga, self-tormenting, self-mortification practice, is contented by using 3 words. The first one is dukkho, because these Attakilamata Nuyoga practices bring suffering both in the mind and the body. They are not ordinary kind of practices, but they are extreme, tormenting, exhausting one's body. Tormenting, exhausting one's body, one suffers physically and mentally, and thus it is dukkho. Anariyo, it is the act of ignoble person, and anatta-sanhito, it is not one's true benefit or welfare. So these 3 words are used to content the Attakilamata Nuyoga practice. Usually, people are indulging in sensual pleasure. In order to not to exhaust oneself, one should take sufficient food, one should take water, and also one should change one's posture, and one has to take rest. And one also has to be in moderate temperature. So when the person takes sufficient food, water, and the posture, one will not be exhausted, and one is not practicing self-tormenting practice. But when one is making use of food, water, or things, if one uses them without mindfulness, it can lead to extreme. Being mindful when making use of these things, one will not be going into extreme. By lack of mindfulness, if one does not discern mind and matter, cause and effect, if one does not discern that things are suffering, one will take them as good, pleasant. One takes pleasure in seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and so on. And one will crave onto these things, and one will crave for better and better things. The greed, the craving will become stronger and stronger, and one wastes one time in pursuing these better and better objects. Wasting one's time in pursuing better and better sense objects, one will not be morally uplifted. Some of them, they also go on to other extremes, not eating food, not taking sufficient food or water, or not eating at all, not wearing clothes. They practice such kind of extremes, as they believe that tormenting one's body, when the body becomes exhausted, such kind of desire or the craving will not arise. So in this way, they practice wrongfully, and it is mere tormenting. One is tormenting, exhausting oneself. It is not the middle way. practicing Satipatthana meditation, at the beginning of the practice, the mind goes here and there, and at times the yogi even doubts whether she will be able to practice. But with courage and with encouragement from the meditation teachers, yogi asserts effort in the practice. Yogi boosts up his or her effort, and thus yogi comes to discern mind and matter, cause and effect, impermanent suffering and non-self. When the yogi discerns that arising and passing away are constantly tormenting, one understands that things are suffering. Discerning suffering through practice, one develops Dukkhanupassana jnana. By being mindful of these objects, discerning that one is constantly tormented by arising and passing away, one will no longer take these as good. When one sees suffering in the presently arising nama-rupa, one also comes to understand that the objects that have been noted, as well as the nama-rupa phenomena that are to arise, are all suffering. Discerning suffering through the practice of Satipatthana, one overcomes the wrong perception that things are good and pleasant. If one takes things as good and pleasant, there will be attachment, craving, clinging. When one sees things as suffering, one will no longer crave. When one's Vipassana jnana becomes quite strong, however one may come across pleasant objects, one will no longer crave. Even though one may come across pleasant objects, desirable objects, extremely pleasant objects, on the sixth sense door, one will no longer crave when one's Vipassana jnana becomes strong. Even if the person encounters desirable objects to see, to hear, and so on, seeing them as suffering, one will no longer take them as good, and thus one will be free from craving. So yogi experiences that she is free from craving when his or her notings are good, when she is developing Vipassana jnana. By being mindful of the objects, one comes to discern unique individual characteristics, sabhava lakkhana, and common characteristics, samanya lakkhana. Discerning these characteristics, one will no longer crave on things, and thus the person is said to be on the right path of Vipassana practice. As the yogi practices, when one discerns that things are suffering, when one understands that things are suffering, clearly one removes craving. In this way, one abandons the extreme practice of Kama Sukhalika New Yoga. So the extreme practice, Kama Sukhalika New Yoga, is abandoned by practicing Satipatthana meditation. And the yogis who are here, monk yogi or lay yogi, They take sufficient food, so they are not tormenting their body with hunger. And they're also wearing clothes. They are not practicing extreme practice of being naked, and they are keeping their posture by doing alternately sitting and walking meditation. And also they're keeping their body in moderate temperature by taking shower when the weather is hot, or keeping their body warm when it is cold. And also the yogis are taking enough rest. In this way, they are not practicing self-tormenting practice. In this way, one is abandoning Attakilamata new yoga. One is abandoning self-tormenting practice. Noting the presently arising object, in each of the noting, sila, morality, is involved. One refrains oneself, one abandons gross defilement, so that the transgressions are refrained. By being mindful of presently arising object with sustained mindfulness, when the mind is calm and collected, defilement cannot arise based on the object that the yogi is noting. And if the defilements arise, yogi should remove it by being mindful. Practicing Satipatthana meditation, walking on this path of Satipatthana practice, one discerns mind and matter, cause and effect, and also impermanent suffering and non-self. Discerning impermanent suffering and non-self through the practice of Satipatthana, one develops Vipassana knowledge, and one no longer takes things as good, and thus one is removing craving. So the defilement that has been following throughout the samsara will be removed by practicing sila, samadhi and panya. By practicing sila, samadhi and panya, one is also abandoning the two extreme practices, Kamasukhalika New Yoga and Attakilamata New Yoga. In order to avoid self-tormenting practice, one should take sufficient food and water. One should keep one's posture. One should keep suitable body posture. And when one is making use of these things, one should be mindful. One should be mindful every time one uses these things in order to keep oneself in moderate. Practicing sila, samadhi, panya is called patipada. It is the middle path. The sila, samadhi, panya is the middle path leading to nibbana. And when one is walking on this Satipatthana path, the middle path, one is abandoning the two extremes, and one is said to be on the right path. So if one continues to practice on the right path, one will reach one's destination. Before one reaches destination, when the yogi gains Udayabbaya jnana, discerning fast arising and passing away, one feels much joy, satisfaction when one reaches Udayabbaya jnana. Kamasukhalika New Yoga. Kamasukhalika New Yoga is indulgence in sensual pleasure, and it is extreme practice. In order to avoid Kamasukhalika Yoga, one should mindful every time one sees, every time one hears, every time one smells, and so on. When one discerns arising and passing away, and when one develops Vipassana Jnana by seeing arising and passing away, one will see things as suffering, and one will no longer take them as good, and one will no longer crave. At this stage of developing Vipassana Jnana, even though yogi comes across desirable objects, one will not take them as good, and thus there will not be craving, and one is said to be abandoning the Kamasukhalika Yoga practice. In order to avoid oneself from self-tormenting, one has to eat sufficient food, one has to eat, drink moderately, not to exhaust oneself, and one should keep oneself in moderate temperature, one should take rest. The purpose of eating, drinking, sleeping, taking rest, keeping posture in moderate is to avoid tormenting oneself. And when one is making use of these things, one should be mindful whenever one is making use of these things. Being mindful when one is making use of these things, one will also be free from the extreme of Kamasukhalika Yoga. So in this way, one should be mindful so that one develops knowledge. By developing knowledge, one is abandoning the two extreme practices. Practicing Satipatthana meditation, one is practicing the middle path that is free from two extreme practices. Buddha himself practiced this way, and Buddha led the beings this middle path, so that by practicing the middle path, the beings can reach their destination. But while the yogis are here, if the yogi does not practice respectfully, meticulously, thoroughly, if the yogi is practicing in an easy-going manner, without practicing diligently, respectfully, meticulously, such kind of yogi will be reaching the extreme. And if she comes across desirable objects, there can be greed, craving, and the yogi goes to the extreme by not being mindful. And such kind of person is losing Majjhima Paripada, the middle path. So, one should not torment oneself. If one thinks that sitting very long hours will lead him to good practice, and if she is practicing the way she thinks is right, which is not in accordance with the guidance, it will be self-tormenting practice, it will be extreme, and one is also losing Majjhima Paripada, the middle path. In order to develop Vipassana Jnana, in order to mature the knowledge, one should practice according to the guidance and instruction, so that one will be removing the two extreme practices, one will be on the right path, one can reach the destination, and it will be worthy of coming across the Buddha's teaching as a human being. Rosaraji has been giving this talk about the middle path, which is free from these two extremes, so that yogis can keep following the middle path in order to reach their destination. And that will be all for today. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.